Hi, folks. So we know business is all about a battle. So, how can you fight a battle and defeat the big boys in your sector? Join me. Let's find out. Hi, folks. Welcome to The Way I See It, which is my podcast on all things money, the economy, and finance. So, how does a small insurgent company or brand take on a more larger established brand and win? Is it possible? Of course, it's possible. Lots of smaller companies have beaten large established brands in their sector. I mean, you think about Amazon and Barnes and Noble, you think about even Netflix and Blockbuster Video. It's happened. How can we learn from this example? So, if you are a smaller company and you want to take on this giant in your sector that's got a larger marketing budget, it's got more staff, it's got more resources, what are the things that you can do to win or to at least gain market share? Well, I have four examples from four companies that I would like to share with you, and you could then draw lessons. And I think either way, they're going to be good lessons for you, and they will always help your business going forward. So, my first example is going to be about being strategic and defining your objective in a simple, clear way that everyone in your company can understand and implement. So, in 1964, Phil Knight and his coach, Bill Bowerman, started a company called Blue Ribbon Sports Company, and they were just selling high quality but very inexpensive Japanese running shoes. The market leader at that time was a company called Adidas. They were a multinational. They have been founded since 1949, and they were big. They were everywhere. And Nike essentially was trying to take them down. So in 1965, that company, Blue Ribbon Sports Company, had revenues of about $8,000, nothing really. And then they changed their brand name to Nike, right? So they were going to take down this big company. What Phil Knight did really was he set out his vision in a very, very clear, simple, straightforward way. He said his vision is crush Adidas. Simple. That's a way to be strategic. That's a way to define. That's a way to direct tunnel vision what you want to accomplish. It's also a way to communicate very clearly across the ranks. Now, everyone in Nike then knew that, listen, all we are doing every time we meet Adidas, we want to outbid them, we want to outplay them, we want to outsmart them. Very simple way. Because when you're beating Adidas, you're getting better. You can't beat Adidas by simply being sloppy. You beat Adidas or you beat the market leader by doing things better than them, by being more customer focused, by delivering faster than them, by doing your inventory at a more efficient method than the market leader. But the key thing is the way you communicate that vision from the top. So the first example that we can copy is to say we have to be strategic and we have to define our objective in clear, simple terms that can be communicated across the market and that everyone can understand in our internal organization what we want to do, right? So that's the first lesson. Be strategic, communicate clearly, communicate simply. The second example I like to give is going to be outflanking the enemy. When you have a big market leader in front of you, it might not be a smart idea to go directly frontal. You want to go and outflank them, and see if you can get market share before they can find you. So in Nigeria, back in the 90s, you had the market leader in the milk subsector that was called Wamco, and Wamco had the Peak Milk brand. And Peak Milk was liquid milk. It was sold in a can. So once you open up that milk, you had to either finish it or you put it in a cold storage, a fridge. Otherwise, it's going to go bad, right? It was rather expensive. The economy back then, also Nigeria, was not doing too good. So milk was more or less like a luxury. So you can imagine if you buy a luxury and you can't finish it, you'd have to you can't keep it in the fridge as well because Nigeria back then had serious power cuts. So that was a problem for Peak Milk. They had an expensive brand and it had to be stored in the fridge. What Cowbell did, which was Cowbell was the milk brand that was introduced by a company called Promosido. They went to the flanks. They introduced milk in sachets and they introduced powdered milk. So first of all, powdered milk did not have to be stored in the fridge, and it was shelf stable. You could use it and then store it, or you could buy just the milk in the sachet, exactly the amount that you needed for your tea or for your cornflakes. So it was in a tight economy. The pricing was good, the product was good, even the distribution was excellent, because then people could buy that they didn't have power in their homes and just store it anywhere on the shelf. So Cowbell, the brand, was able to outflank Peak, the brand, by introducing a product that was cheaper, but that was more attuned to the economic realities at the time of the market. And they gained considerable market share before Peak was able to turn around and say, hey, let's challenge these guys by introducing our own brand into the market. They had then, which was Cowbell, gotten sufficient market share in the market. So that's a good way to do it. Don't go frontal. Look for weakness in the branding, or look for weakness in the strategy of the big player, and then try to exploit that. If they have no brands covering a specific segment of the market, you might want to go to that segment, build out your bridgehead, and then from there attack them frontally when you now have the market share and the revenues to do that. So key example there, outflanking the enemy to gain market share. The third example is going to be to give your consumers victory, i.e., to focus on what your consumers want, not just your own strengths as an organization. So again, the same example in Nigeria, you had a bank called First Bank. It was established in 1894. So it was established before Nigeria, the country, got its independence. And of course, First Bank was the classic British bank, prudent, well managed, lots of assets and all. So if you were the bank in Nigeria you would say, what makes a good bank? Well, the deposits, how good are the management, how safe is my money? That was how banking was defined, i.e., those are the attributes of a good bank. Well, GT came to the market in the 1990. It was just 96 years after First Bank. And what GT did was to say, why aren't the customers looking at customer service? They introduced customer service to the mindset of the customer and told the customer, you should ask about customer service. You should want quality customer service. And we're talking about things like an account officer, knowing your birthdays and sending you a birthday card on your birthdays, having water in the banking halls when you walk in, having a nice, clean, beautiful, and aesthetically pleasing banking hall. Those little things touched the consumer's need to be recognized. People, human beings are social creatures. We want also to be seen. We want to be appreciated. GT Bank was able to touch that, and they defined banking not just in terms of assets and balance sheets, but also in terms of customer satisfaction that allowed them to get space in that marketplace, build that little bridgehead, and then from there start to build out branches using that brand affinity. In essence, GT Bank made their customers love them, and by loving them, they're able to get customers, and then we're able to get customers to then go back and fight First Bank on the market field. Today, GT Bank is a larger bank in terms of assets, but than First Bank. But it's all how they were able to define when they started their focus on the customer, on customer service, building an affinity and giving their customers a victory. The customers could say, this is our bank, my bank likes me, my bank knows who I am. They send me a card on my birthday. So they gave their customers a victory, and their customers were able to stay with them, and they were able to then build assets from there. So a key point again is, when you're fighting a war, make sure that you own the hearts and minds of the population and you have them on your side. The last example I'm going to give is going to be building your own special forces. When you go to war, sometimes you have to build and train your own special forces and not just rely on the rank and file conscript army that you have there. An example I'm going to give is going to be M-Pesa. M-Pesa was a phone-based transfer service owned by Safaricom in Kenya. And what it was you could take your cell phone. Back then, not now when it's all the rage. Back then, you could take your cell phone to a vendor and you could give the vendor cash, and the vendor would load on your SIM card money, right? And then you could go somewhere else, and then you could then give on the vendor the money in your SIM card, and you could get cash. So it was like a cash transfer. And if you think about where this was happening in Kenya, where you don't have a lot of bank branches in the rural areas, what that meant was that I could, in Kenya from Nairobi, put money not just on my phone, on my SIM card, put a little SIM card in my socks or in my coat, and travel on the rural areas to my village, and then take my SIM card and then get cash and spend in rural areas. Very convenient. So it caught on. And I think about 83% of the Kenyan population was using Safaricom just after 5 years of operations. So this was a big deal for M-Pesa. They were able to get market share because people wanted the product. But the key thing that made them successful was when they had to distribute this. Keep in mind, no one would buy that product if they had to go miles and miles and miles to get someone to download their SIM card to cash, or to get someone to give them cash from a SIM card. They have to have the vendors everywhere. I mean, 10 minutes walk where you could get a vendor. But to get vendors, it was difficult because no one would try to, the guys that sold normal, say, recharge cards would look at this as, listen, this is a competition to me. If I sell this card, this product, that is going to compete with my own business, because then these guys are going to take all their cash and put in your phone. They might not buy your phone recharge card from me, and I might lose business because they don't cannibalize me. So what M-Pesa did was to then build its own special forces using, they would go to a place, recruit someone, and that person would then recruit two guys would recruit four, and then they had this network of marketers going out and being agents that you could then use as vendors to the guys that use a Safaricom app or the SIM card on their phone. So what this means that they were able to then train their people, teach them the benefits and how to sell the service. Remember, they were competing with banks. This was a mobile company back then. They didn't go to the banks. They basically built up their own sales force of well-trained, dedicated guys that were then able to be around in the population, even in the rural areas. And that was what drove the 83% adoption rate for Safaricom, that you could go out of your house and see a Safaricom agent, and you could basically get your download. Remember, Safaricom is not going to deal with all those agents, but just the top guys. So it was also easier for them to deal with, and then to grow that market. So the key thing here is build out your own special forces. If you have to sell a product, sometimes you might not want to say outsource your marketing. You might want to have a very, very good marketers that can explain the service, explain the benefits, not just the benefits, not just the features of that product, to then gain considerable market share for your brand. So I think these four things, if you implement them, they can only do well in your organization. If number one, you define your strategy and you communicate that strategy that is understood by everyone in your company, just like how Nike did. Number two, you try to outflank your enemy by introducing products in areas where the big company is not strong in, just like what Cowbell did to Peak. You also try to win your customers' hearts and minds by introducing features or by doing your business in such a way that the customers love you, just like what GT did with First Bank. And of course, you want to build out your own special forces. You want to build out your own team that can communicate your own benefits to the customers, and then you can then have adoption rates go up, and you can challenge an established player in the marketplace. So four good things for you to do, and if you do them, like I said, it can only be good for you. So guys, we'll close here. Keep following us on Twitter. The handle again is ThinPlanCaluArcher1. I'll see you guys next week. Stay blessed. Stay safe. Take care.